reading Saigyo's Poems of a Mountain Home, and still come to part 12. Where reached miscellaneous poems. We had read The Seasons, and we had read love poems, and we come to this poem says, written when he was feeling very downcast and discouraged and heard a cricket singing close to his pillow. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember of the poem? You heard a cricket? Anyways, it says, at that time on my pillow, under roots of mugwort, then too may these insects cheer me with friendly notes. Oh, friendly notes. He says here, Saigyo's imagining the time when he will be in his grave. And he's saying, is he saying that the insects are going to cheer him? Because it says, at that time on my pillow under roots of mugwort, then too may these insects cheer me with friendly notes. I don't know if that's what that means.
If he tells about under roots, that means he's already...
He's under?
Yeah.
He's been put under?
He's imagining that.
Well, Saigyo, lived alone in a mountain hut, so...
His friends will...
For a time, the crickets probably were his friends. The sound of the crickets, basically, he's been listening to for quite a while. His friends. I'll read it again to have an again consciousness. At that time on my pillow, under roots of mugwort, then too may these insects cheer me with friendly notes.
Or maybe he had a dream.
We don't know.
Dreamed about that. It sounds like a dream could be like that.
On the phrase, all phenomena are fleeting, he probably got this phrase from Buddhism because he's a practicing Buddhist. He says, I think of past times so swift in their vanishing, the present soon to follow, dew on the morning glory.
This sounds like the last poem you read about yesterday, not being here today.
Well, things are fleeting. The present moment is fleeting, and the present is soon to vanish as well, like dew on a morning glory. It says that from the famous verse of the 7th chapter, here's he's referring to the Nirvana Sutra. All phenomena are fleeting. This is the law of birth and death. When you have wiped out birth and death, Nirvana is your joy. So it says, I think of past times so swift in their vanishing, the present soon to follow, dew on the morning glory. We get some Buddhism here. Now the next poem he says, when I was traveling in the province of Mikinoku, I saw in the fields a grave that seemed more imposing than ordinary. I asked someone and was told it was the grave of the middle captain. Then asked who the middle captain might be and learned that it was Sanikata, which made me feel very sad. The scene was already desolate enough, and with pompous grass withered by frost dimly visible, whichever way one looked, and when I tried to describe it later, I felt as the words had failed me. I think it was some like a military general or something, but I'm going to read the poem. His name alone imperishable, he left behind pampas grass and withered fields I see as his memento. And it does say that Fujiwara Sanikataro, a captain in the Imperial Guard and son of Fujiwara Satatoki, was a distinguished poet whose works are included in the Sushi and other imperial anthologies. After quarreling with another member of the Fujiwara family in the palace, he was assigned the post of governor of the province of Mutsu and Mochinoki in the far north and died there in 998. So I guess Saigyo's looking at his grave or something. He's traveling here. And here he presents his travel notes prior to the poem like Basho does. See, Basho writes his travel notes and then he writes a poem. So I'll read it again. His name alone imperishable, he left behind pampas grass and withered fields I see as his memento. You know, I don't care about that one.
I don't know why she wrote about that. Anyway.
The guy, I don't know, he just sees it as just a bunch of weeds left there. I don't know what he sees. Okay, this one is after the lady in waiting of the second rank to Takino is
Maybe because he finds how nonsense was to fight for the position.
the fighting. He probably finds it nonsensical to fight. But this one is after the lady in waiting of the second rank died. I wrote these 10 poems in company with others. So some lady dies and he writes a poem. On the waters of the flowing river, a jewel, a bead of foam, the pity of this fugitive world. Says the lady in waiting of the second rank was Fujiwara Asako, the second wife of the statesman Fujiwara Michijino. She was wet nurse to Emperor Go-Shinkara and lady in waiting to Takimanen and consort to Emperor Toga and mother of the emperors. And she died in the first month of 1116. Saigyo had been a close friend of her and her two sons, was 49 at the time. Close friend of her and her two sons, who had been a close friend of her two sons. I don't get that at all. So she died in 1159. Alright, so he's friends. And he writes, on the waters of the flowing river, a jewel, a bead of foam, the pity of this fugitive world. From the 10 poems, he says, again, we saw you off, and returning through the fields, I thought the morning dew had wet my sleeve, but it was my tears. In one of my poems I write, little beads of sweat ran down my side. I thought they were my tears. And he says, we saw you off, and returning through the fields, I thought the morning dew had wet my sleeve, but it was my tears. I guess he liked this lady and missed her. From the 10 poems, there's more of these poems, adding one more to the graves at the foot of Boat Hill, we make you someone of the past. He's becoming someone of the past now when you die. Boot Hill is a small hill in the northern outskirts of Kyoto where the bodies were cremated and buried. He says, adding one more to the graves at the foot of Boot Hill, we make you someone of the past. And we continue with these funeral poems. Pray for me in my life to come, she begged me, promise. Those words a legacy never to be forgot. We continue with these
So she asked me to pray for her.
funeral poems.
What she did life.
Here she says, the path we search for in your wake, we've already entered, never straying among the bitter hills of death. The path is the way of Buddha. The lady in waiting has already gone on her next existence. Here he says, the path we search for in your wake, we've already entered, never straying among the bitter hills of death. And that's what they had there in Japan is Buddhism. Now we have something called the Poems on Impermanence. Well, it's not surprising he writes on impermanence. He says, fishermen by a rocky shore, winds blowing wildly, in a boat unmoored, such is our condition. Interesting. You know how Hafez says that our life is like we're left on a boat in the ocean, right? And God says, don't get wet. We're left on a boat, a small boat on the ocean.
On a raft.
On a raft. And God says, okay, don't get wet. And here, Saigyo says, fishermen by a rocky shore, winds blowing wildly in a boat unmoored, such is our condition. Very similar. Life is a rocky ride. Here we go. Poems on impermanence. Though whose remains lie here, I do not know. Mount Toribi at sundown, one by one, the terrible graves. Goodness. Mount Toribi is a hill east of Kyoto used as crematorium and graveyard. Here he's at the graveyard. He says, though whose remains lie here, I do not know. Mount Toribi at sundown, one by one, the terrible graves.
Anything good around here? Stop reading.
Stop reading?
If that's how we continue.
You're tired of the grave poems? All right, we're stopping. We're gonna stop at part 12.
Can you read one of the elderly ones? The big one?
Part 12. No, I have to stop because we've come to the end of 15 minutes. Our life is limited now by YouTube.
And open the book at the beginning.
Well, we've come to the end of Saigyo's reading part 12. We had a bunch of funeral poems, which
You don't have to say more about it, enough. Just some of the early poems, read a good one. Don't be left on that note.
I can't control the flow of the book.
You do, it's a book, you just open it wherever you want.
You can't have love all the time. So that's life. You can't have love all the time.
We can have what the book has. So we can open the